Ginny and Georgia Season 3 is finally acknowledging the elephant in the room by overtly posing the question we've all been debating for years. The Netflix series' third installment picks up just after Georgia's arrest for Tom Fuller's murder. She is, of course, 100% guilty, but those who love her are prepared to fight for her freedom regardless. As the audience, we tend to cheer for Georgia right alongside her family. Sure, she really has killed 3 people, that we know of, but Ginny and Georgia makes it so easy to justify Georgia's tough choices. Georgia's likability isn't exclusive to audiences, of course. It's tough for any Ginny and Georgia character to dislike this charismatic woman for long. This is a fact that Ginny tends to struggle with. She loves her mother, but seeing everyone fall for Georgia's lies hook, line, and sinker causes Ginny significant frustration. However, we see the tables turn in Ginny and Georgia Season 3. As disturbing truth after truth is revealed, everyone begins to turn on Georgia. This meant that Ginny had to ask herself, and audiences, a difficult question. Ginny and Georgia finally asks the hardest question: should Georgia get away with it? We sympathize with her, but does she deserve it? It was so easy to subconsciously root for Georgia in Ginny and Georgia's first 2 seasons, and the same is somewhat true in Season 3. Throughout this series, we typically take Ginny's perspective. She naturally loves her mother, which means that we love Georgia, too. Ginny knows her mother's flaws, but she instinctively defends her when it comes down to it, and so do we. However, Ginny and Georgia Season 3 brought Ginny to her breaking point. She was finally forced to ask herself whether Georgia deserved to get away with her crimes. On the surface, it's pretty easy to justify Georgia's murders. Killing her first husband was an accident, and Georgia had been so young and desperate. Her second husband was becoming inappropriate with Ginny, so Georgia went into mama bear mode and saw to Kenny's punishment herself. Then there is Tom Fuller, who was dying slowly as his family waited in agonizing limbo. Ginny and Georgia's first 2 seasons tricked audiences into seeing these crimes as Georgia did. However, Season 3 does a little work to pull back the curtain. Season 3 makes it impossible to write off or ignore Georgia's crimes. Georgia can't excuse her behavior anymore. Georgia Miller looking shocked in Ginny and Georgia Season 3. During Georgia's long trial in Ginny and Georgia Season 3, the public began to call Georgia a number of terrible names. She was identified as a sociopath or narcissist with complex PTSD, who, if left free, would continue to hurt people. Georgia's instinct was to say that everything she was being accused of was a lie, and it was easy for even we who saw her crimes on screen to believe her. However, as characters like Paul and Zion fully realized what Georgia had done, and as we saw Ginny and Austin slowly improve in their mother's absence, it became harder to ignore the truth in the public's claims. When it comes down to it, Georgia's murders cannot be justified. It was wrong for her to poison her first husband, and she could have easily divorced Kenny without murdering him. Still, Georgia's choice to kill Tom Fuller is the most disturbing. Yes, he was dying already, but the fact that Georgia so impulsively shortened this process based on Cynthia's exhausted and emotional words indicates just how much this Ginny and Georgia character doesn't understand or value life. She truly is dangerous, not because she is evil, but because she is too broken to understand right from wrong. Georgia does get away with it, but she's not totally safe in Ginny and Georgia Season 4. Now that Georgia is free, she is sure to do more damage. Georgia holding milk in Ginny and Georgia. Ginny knew that Georgia didn't deserve to get away with murder in Ginny and Georgia Season 3. However, this is her mother we are talking about. Perhaps if Georgia were simply evil in the traditional sense, Ginny could have let her go to prison. However, things aren't typically that cut and dry. Ginny took a leaf out of her mother's book and manipulated the situation so that Georgia could go free. However, it's doubtful that this mother-daughter duo will now live happily ever after, although previous installments of Ginny and Georgia suggested that Georgia would only hurt people if she were backed into a desperate situation. Tom Fuller's death and the events of Season 3 proved that this isn't the case. We can like, and even love, Georgia's character, and so can those within her story. However, it's inevitable that she will commit further violent crimes. Even Ginny knows that her mother didn't deserve to go free, she just hopes that Georgia will earn it now after the fact. As Ginny and Georgia continues and the stakes get higher, however, we can't expect Georgie to live up to Ginny's wishful thinking.